John Smith was an English explorer, soldier, and published author who lived from 1580 to 1631. Smith is most notable for his contributions to American history by establishing the first permanent British settlement in the New World, Jamestown, and saving it from early devastation. Smith was one of the only members of the first wave of British settlers to the continent who actually had the vital skills needed to survive in a relatively hostile environment, and he used said skills to eventually rise to leader of the Virginia colony. Smith trained his men to work the land and scratch out an existence on the harsh Atlantic seaboard through farming. He is known for having said, "He that will not work shall not eat." Through this strict policy, Jamestown survived in the wilderness through harsh winters, uncooperative men, and the occasional Powhatan Indian attack. He named the region in which they settled New England, and is credited with being the first person to map the Chesapeake Bay region. His subsequent books encouraged future colonization, stating that, "Here every man may be master and owner of his own labor and land. If he have nothing but his hands, he may, by industries, quickly grow rich," a sentiment that would serve to call the hearts of immigrants for generations, and is still reflected in our society today. Smith's valiant efforts allowed the Jamestown settlement to pull through and eventually thrive, but unfortunately he was forced to return to England after an explosion of gunpowder, an accident that would put an end to his adventures. Nevertheless, his determination to overcome obstacles presented by the New England region, as well as his fellow men, allowed Smith to become an important figure in American, if not world history, and therefore deserving of a place on Mr. Thornton's A. Push Hall of Fame. John Smith was born sometime around January 6, 1580 in Lincolnshire, where his parents rented a farm from a local landlord. He makes no appearance in records again until 1596, when, at 16, his father died, and Smith decided he wished to set off to sea. Between this time and 1601, Smith served as a jack of all trades, serving as a mercenary in the army of France, dabbling in piracy on the Mediterranean, and fought against the Ottoman Turks in the Long Turkish War. After beheading 3 of these men in single combat, he was knighted by the Prince of Transylvania. In 1602, however, Smith was injured, captured, and sold as a slave. While there is nothing to support this but Smith's word, he claims to have been sold to a Turkish nobleman, who in turn gifted him to his Greek mistress, who then fell in love with him. He was then taken to Crimea, where he escaped to tour Europe and northern Africa, before returning to England in 1604. In 1606, Smith became involved with the Virginia Company of England, whose goal was to colonize North America for monetary reasons and had been granted a charter by King James I. The expedition set sail in December of that year and consisted of 3 ships, the Discovery, the Susan Constant, and the Godspeed. During the journey, Smith was accused of mutiny, and plans were in the works to execute him. However, the Virginia Company ordered that Smith was to be a leader in the colony, sparing him from the noose. The voyagers made it to Jamestown in April of 1607, and by fall of that year were still living in inadequate housing and were only allowed a cup of grain a day. Due to the swampy environment, brackish water, poor nutrition, starvation, and disease, 60 of the 104 men brought over were dead by November. That December, while searching for food alongside the Chickahominy River, Smith was captured by Powhatans and taken to, and I'm going to botch this, Werowocomoco, the center of the Powhatan Confederacy. Smith attributed his eventual release to the chieftain's daughter, Pocahontas, who threw herself across his body during what was supposed to be his execution, risking her own life to save his. After this, Pocahontas convinced her father to allow Smith to leave unscathed, marking the beginning of a rather complicated relationship between the Jamestown settlers and Powhatan tribe. And just if you're all wondering, the romance that Disney created for their feature film, Pocahontas, between John Smith and Pocahontas is unproven, unlikely, unrealistic, and hopefully untrue, as John Smith was 27 at the time, to Pocahontas' mere 12. In January, 100 more settlers arrived, to find only 44 men left. An accident led to a fire that burned all original buildings to the ground, forcing the first colonists to live in the burned ruins because the James River froze over. The settlers wasted a lot of time that winter loading ships with what turned out to be pyrite, or fool's gold. While Native Americans did provide food for the supplyless voyagers, more than half died. By that April, Smith had had enough. He set the men to building true houses, as well as teaching them to plant various crops. That summer, he mapped the Chesapeake Bay, a map that would prove useful for Virginia explorers for a century to come. The following fall, Smith suffered a terrible shock when ships arrived carrying 500 settlers, including women and children. This angered Smith greatly, as the Virginia Company was sending people with no real logistical planning or support. Regardless, Smith refused to abandon Jamestown, despite many pleas. After the next winter, only 150 of the original 500 were still alive. Still, Smith expanded Jamestown with the clearing of acres of land for farming and the building of many dwellings. Due to his strict orders, settlers and Native Americans alike planned to do away with Smith, allegedly warned of this plot by Pocahontas. Smith called a meeting where he threatened to banish anyone who did not work from the fort. Captain John Smith was injured that October when a keg of gunpowder exploded in his canoe, and he was forced to return to England for treatment. Smith had been holding a colony together for 2.5 years against all odds and cruel tricks of fate, and yet he was never able to return to Virginia to see the outcome of his struggle. Smith did, however, return to the Americas in 1614 to explore the New England coast, and in fact gave the region its name, as well as naming Plymouth, the Charles River, and Cape Anna. Twice he tried to return to Jamestown, but both times was unsuccessful, once due to storms, the second to French pirates. Smith eventually made his way back to England, where he remained until his death on June 21, 1631, at the age of 51. A little-known fact about John Smith today is that he was an accomplished writer, and one of his main subjects was the colonization of the New World by England. While many authors of the time tried to promote the Americas as a place to find gold and where all dreams instantly came true, Smith didn't sugarcoat it. He gave an undeniably real account of life in North America and was very straightforward when it came time to describe the dangers that awaited them there. But he also described the bounty of opportunities the New World offered, not in gold but in industry and freedom. He illustrated America as a place ideal for farming, fishing, shipbuilding, and fur trading. Rather than making false promises to his readers as others did, Smith attracted interest through depictions of fertile soil and abundant resources. He warned, however, that only the committed and hard-working would be able to survive and reap such benefits. Smith did not write simply to supply the Virginia Company with willing men. He saw the New World as a place of both infinite danger and opportunity, and argued that through the gambling of their lives, future colonists stood to gain all the benefits the Americas could offer. In conclusion, Smith is vital to U.S. history as his determination and strength of character allowed him to head a colony continuously on the brink of failure, opening up the rest of the continent to British influence and the eventual colonization of New England. It is in this region that the birth of a little nation known as the United States of America took place. Today, we live in that same country, a global power and competitor, spreading from Smith's Atlantic seaboard to Lewis and Clark's Pacific. If not for Smith's contributions in the first English settlement, Jamestown, as well as his effort to support the colonization of the Americas, America would not be as it is now. While some may argue that Jamestown isn't that significant, that if it hadn't succeeded, the English would have formed a colony elsewhere, I disagree. I think the settlement of Jamestown was necessary as the daily struggle for life and prosperity set the tone of the New World for centuries to come, a melody that echoes through time to our day, where we face new barriers and issues with the same desperate need for success that Jamestown leader John Smith must have felt when he first saw the land he was destined to settle. And this is why Captain John Smith deserves to be on Mr. Thorne's A. Push Class Hall of Fame 2016.